Right now, we're going to take a little side trip to Danbury, Connecticut, and Still River Editions. It's a printing lab for artists, run by artists. Now, for years, Still Rivers had a famous client, the legendary photojournalist Bill Eppridge. We're going to meet up with Eppridge's widow, Adrienne Arricchio, there. And she's been busy for the last several years cataloging the work of her late husband. Adrienne, so great to meet you, and thank you for taking the time today.
Well, thank you for coming and interviewing me and letting me talk about Bill and all his great work.
Yeah. Bill passed away in 2013.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about him.
Well, Bill was a lifelong photojournalist. He dreamed of what he ended up doing when he was a little boy, and he was one of the lucky ones who was able to follow through and become what he'd envisioned.
He was making pictures at an early age.
Yes, yeah. And when he went to high school, he volunteered to be the school photographer because they didn't have one. And he had to go home and ask his older sister how to use the camera. So, but from there, he was off and running.
Over the course of Bill's incredible photography career, he was able to bear witness to events that would shape the course of history, from Beatlemania to the tragic assassination of Robert Kennedy. Bill's photographs help tell stories and give perspective to so many impactful moments. When you see a photograph of Bill's, when you touch a photograph of Bill's, do you get a sense of being near him?
If it's the older prints, the vintage prints, yeah, because then I know those are from the time he shot them, and there's a whole story behind each picture and his part in it. So yeah, I do. Even though you live with them, you know them for so many years, there's always something else that they maybe didn't tell you.
Why did you and Bill decide to move to Connecticut?
He'd survived a pancreatic tumor, pancreatic cancer, and a year after that had to have back surgery from carrying 40 pounds of gear his whole life. You know, those Nikons are heavy. So he wanted to be somewhere out in the country again and have, he didn't know how long he was going to live. When you have an operation as serious as he did, the doctors tell you have a 20% chance to live 5 years. So we didn't know how long he could live. And he said, if I don't know how long I'm going to live, I want to live somewhere where it's peaceful and calm.
So this few-hour shoot turned into 6 days with the Beatles.
6 days, yeah.
What is Bill's recollection of that time?
He thought they were really fun. They they were kind of madcap. They were always playing jokes, but he was intrigued by the amount of interest by the general public, which is why he liked to show show how they were looking at the Beatles,
right?
Not just through his lens.
I noticed, especially in that first tour, when you'd see pictures by Bill, but pictures by other people as well, the Beatles, everyone had a really nice camera, it looked like, and they were taking a lot of pictures.
Yeah.
Did they ever hit Bill up for some advice?
Well, you mean the Beatles?
Yeah.
From what I've read of Paul McCartney's new book and his show, he has been quoted saying that he was a novice, and so he would ask the professionals what to do, and he would watch how they were taking pictures and he would copy them.
Yeah.
So that's how you learn.
And Paul has a picture
of
Bill.
Paul has a picture. They've been using it for the publicity for his show, and it's of Bill and another photographer named Dazo Hoffman, who are in Central Park photographing Paul McCartney while he's photographing them.
Did Barbra Streisand and Bill have a rapport?
That was her doing her laundry while Bill was she said, I'll just be a fly on the wall, do what you normally do. And so she was washing our clothes, and that's an old style apartment. This is at the Chanel Couture show. And there's Barbara in her leopard suit. And these are
wow, look at that.
The wives of some well-known people. That's a famous actress, Elsa Martinelli, and that's Marlene Dietrich.
Oh, wow.
And they're all in Chanel, except for Barbara, which is pretty much a lot of chutzpah to not have a Chanel suit on.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah, but I love that picture.
Was Bill Eppridge self-critical?
Yes, probably more so than anyone. Yeah, he was a very good editor of his own work. He would go through, and he learned a lot from the person at Life who was the the person in charge of editing all the negatives.
Was Bill concerned at all about his legacy? I mean, did he want to make sure that people understood his work?
Yes, because he, and I may have said this before, he really understood history and his place in it. And I mean, of all the stories he shot, there's so many that are so reminiscent of what's going on now in our world and in our country. And he was very cognizant of that too, as he was getting older and watching stuff happening and remembering what he'd seen in earlier years. I mean, he spent time in the 60s, spent a few days with the Grand Dragon of the Ku Klux Klan to photograph him for life. They had done a story on hate, which is so, we see it now too. There's been a resurgence of the Klan in many areas. And just to think that, he's right up close with this guy who put all his purple robes on for him because he was so proud of that. And so Bill, he could see this, seeing that in person, and then also being in the South and being in Mississippi in the 60s, he really saw how much injustice there was. He'd also experienced it as a young boy growing up in Richmond. And something that stuck with him his whole life was seeing a white policeman get on a bus and make an elderly black woman move because she was sitting in the front. And he was with his good friend. They were maybe 10. That they were now old enough they could take the bus downtown to go see a movie. And he said he never forgot that, just the injustice of it. So
For you, what's Bill's legacy?
I would say his legacy is just it's the huge body of work he created and how there is so much history in there that he didn't want any of that to be lost. He saved everything. There are, there's writings from people. There's every note card, every postcard someone sent him, memos from editors, all about his work. He saved everything because he thought this is part of my legacy, is part of my archive that people will want to look at later and understand what was going on all these years ago. Well,
wonderfully composed work here.
I just found this recently as I'm editing through works from 1964. This is August 6th. Of that year, and it was the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party convention. And I don't know how many people photographed it there. In some of the wider shots, I've seen people there, but I had a feeling this was Fannie Lou Hamer because I've seen pictures of her before. So did some research, found her in some news photos. She was wearing the same dress, and she's at the convention, and she sang. I don't know what she sang. I was trying to find that out. I can't find yet. Haven't found it yet, but I will. And it had to be hot as hell in there. It was in a Masonic temple in Jackson, Mississippi. And it was only a couple of days after Bill had photographed the funeral of James Chaney, who was of Chaney, Goodman, and Schwerner, the 3 civil rights workers who were murdered by the Klan, or so they say, in Mississippi.
Of course, Bill is known for that photograph of a dying Robert F. Kennedy Sr., but I always wonder if Bill maybe had a moment where he thought, I shouldn't be taking a picture, I should be helping.
Well, he spoke about that many times.
Yeah.
When he first heard the guns go off, the gunshot, he knew instantly it was a gun. He'd grown up with, his cousins hunting. He knew what guns sounded like. And he immediately pushed forward to try and see what had happened. He didn't know that Bobby Kennedy had been shot. But the remarkable thing about Bill is that he knew once he saw the senator lying on the floor, and it's really, you're talking about seconds here, because when you see video footage of this, the crowd closes in very quickly. So it's somewhat extraordinary that he could make that picture. So he had to have the wherewithal in a split second to say, okay, I can't do much. There are other people closing in. What can I do as a photographer? This is history. And in his mind, he thought it really has to be documented because you don't want questions later, as there always are with JFK.
Thank you so much for shedding light on the amazing life of your husband, Bill Eppridge.
Well, thank you for having me come on and talk about him. I love to share his story with everyone.